Game 4 of the World Chess Championship. Liren playing white, Nepomniachtchi black. This was a tense game with very dynamic play, sacrifices, very interesting strategy. Let's plunge straight in. Ding playing the English as white. And, well, if you remember, Nepo crushed Ding's English in the Candidates tournament last year. This one's a slightly different variation. We've got 4 knights on the board. And white is inviting black to go into a kind of reversed Sicilian like this. But instead, Nepo goes for bishop b4. Very reliable. This, you could say, is the main line. Sound development. It's like a Rossolimo reversed. Queen c2, also the main move in this position. And here, well, Nepo plays, again, the main move, very reliable. Bishop takes knight. I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, I was playing these kind of positions where black castled. But knight d5, and then there's this funny move, queen f5. Very interesting idea. That didn't happen. Instead, Nepo took on c3. Now, the most reliable move here looks like the soundest move. Looks like queen takes bishop. So why didn't Ding do this? Well, it's well known that queen e7, simply protecting this pawn, followed by d5, actually gives black very good play. Black is absolutely fine in these positions because you gain time against the queen. So Ding played pawn takes c3, b takes c3. So it's a very dynamic position. The slightly messed up pawn structure for white, but white has the 2 bishops. And Ding has actually played in this way a couple of times before. d6 from Nepo looks very sound. You see, black has this very sound pawn structure. And now e4. So white is claiming space in the centre. You can see these 2 pawns clamp black in the middle. But it's quite a closed position. And the question is, can white make something of this position with the 2 bishops? Or are the knights going to be better than those bishops? Castles. And here, Carlsen in the past has played g3. Not so bad. And bishop g2. But Ding wants to castle as quickly as possible. Bishop e2. Notice that white can decide whether to play with d3 or d4, depending on how black plays. Now, with black, you can wait around here. One option is to go for the f5 break by moving this knight. Another is to, you can swing this knight over to the king side. Nepo plays in a very straightforward way. He wants to occupy that outpost on f4. And obviously playing a move like g3 will leave those light squares weakened. So Ding played d4. Claiming the centre also means that the bishop covers that square. Knight f4 from Nepo straight away. So Nepo just wants to grab one of those bishops. So Ding decides to exchange off bishop for knight. After the game, Ding said that he was already out of preparation, which is incredible because Ding's second, Richard Rapport, has actually played in exactly this way with white. Here, Rapport, well, we know he's a very creative player. He went for h4 here, but Ding, a little bit more orthodox as a player. He just played, he just castled here, castles kingside. Got an interesting position. White's pawns are a little bit damaged there. That pawn on c4 is potentially a little bit weakened. However, white has a beautiful centre. But black has managed to claim that dark squared bishop. Is this a strength or a weakness, the pawn on f4? Can black later on get some kind of pawn avalanche going on the king side? Queen f6. So that makes sure this pawn is supported. Rook e1. Nice. That pawn is potentially a little bit vulnerable, so it needs supporting, but also that's ready perhaps for a breakthrough. Rook e8, very flexible. That's clearly where the rook belongs. Bishop d3. Right, this introduces interesting possibilities of perhaps opening up this diagonal. Bishop g4. Careful. White has to deal with this threat. So the knight drops back. But I mean, you can see white has a very strong centre here. How is black going to fight against that? Well, Nepo plays in a very provocative way, knight a5. At the moment, that pawn is well covered. But his idea could be that he wants to play c5 and blockade those pawns and also just put a bit of pressure on the d4 pawn. I mean, white can choose to play in a couple of ways. Here, Ding was provoked and he really went for it with c5. You don't have to do that. This is an interesting possibility to play with knight b3. And it looks to me as though white has a wonderful pawn structure here. White certainly has the advantage. That's another way to play. But Ding, after thinking for, well, just over 10 minutes, went for c5. So this is his idea. He's sacrificing a pawn. I mean, he's never going to recapture here. White's pawns are just split and horrible. But no, this is the idea. e5, so that he can get in this move without damaging his pawns. Also opens up the diagonal. Queen is attacked, so the queen shifts across to defend the pawn on h7. And d5, that's the idea. Beautiful centre, but white is a pawn down. So, you know, white is powering through the middle. Black is a pawn up. Rook d8. Yep, super solid. I mean, things with black's position, yeah, white has pushed through the middle, but black is actually pretty well coordinated here. c4. Defending the pawn. And b6. This knight on the rim needs to just recirculate at some moment, potentially back to b7. But black is very solid on the queen side here. You know, everything is protected. So, you know, although these centre pawns are very impressive, it's hard to push them forward because obviously these squares are covered. h3. Let's push the bishop back. And now bishop e4. Yeah, at some moment, and white always has to take care of this move, f3. So the bishop covers f3. Of course, this is not possible. Let's just have a quick look at that. Because of this discovered check. And rook takes rook, winning material. But Nepo finds a good idea. Rook e7. So this is really, I hesitate to call it a weakness, but it's the one point in white's position that can be attacked. So queen c3 defends that, and rook e8. So that just provides black with a little bit of counterplay. Not that white is losing this. Bishop f3 played. You can see this pawn is covered. It's a very tense position. And the knight recycles back into the middle. I mean, it's although the pawns look impressive, it's hard to advance these. They'll just be exchanged off. You know, I would perhaps like to open a file with a4, a5, but that can always be blocked. It's a very difficult position for both sides. One could exchange here straight away. Instead, Nepo goes for rook e2. Just wants to support that pawn. Looks very reasonable. The only thing is, by not exchanging here, it does allow black to play bishop g6. And that just leaves these pieces just slightly treading on each other's toes. I mean, who knows? This knight may recycle around here, or maybe later on bishop g4 and knight f3. But it's something to bear in mind. But Nepo, quite quickly, after just 4 minutes, plays a very committal move. He wants to make things happen. and this is very typical of him. He plays f6. Clearly there's a pin here. The rook on e2 is hanging, so Ding has to advance the pawn to e6. Now, this looks incredible, but the thing is those pawns are very securely blockaded. And as the pawn has advanced, this square is now available for the knight. And that's what Nepo played, knight d6. You could, again, this move, bishop g6, is possible because this is directed against knight e4, which will be a dreadful mistake because then black would exchange, and wow, what a blockading piece, and this bishop is not very good, blocked in by the pawns. But there are ways around this. You could play bishop g4, that's a possibility. But one feels that was a move worth considering. But instead, Nepo played knight d6 very quickly. And rook ae1. Again, Ding could have exchanged bishops, but he just doubled. Very difficult position. You know, bishop g6, still possible. But Nepo, he was in a hurry. Both players playing quite quickly. At this point, they had around about the same amount of time left. They both had just over half an hour to get to the time control at move 40. So no time pressure at all, but still you could feel the pace of the game just increasing. Both players playing very quickly. And Ding decided to take on h5. Again, that bishop g4 move was possible, but this is a very straightforward way of playing. Rook e4, attacking the pawn on f4. Now, to defend that pawn, g5 isn't very good because f6 hangs. So queen h6. Queen f3, attacking the pawn on f4. And here, Nepo played so quickly, but this is such a difficult position. But he was just banging out the moves at this point. g5, I suppose, is the obvious move to protect this pawn. Remember, black is still a pawn up. And then we might get a scenario like this. g4, the knight attacks the rook would retreat, and then really white needs to get rid of that knight. Ideally, white would like to play, let's say, queen d3, probably queen c3 actually, and then knight e4 to exchange off that knight. And, well, obviously white has fantastic compensation in the form of this wonderful pawn chain, but it's very difficult to break through. I mean, I would say it's an easier position for white to play than black. But that is certainly what Nepo should have done. He should have played g5. Instead, he went for knight d4, which, first glance, doesn't look bad. I mean, what a strong piece on d4. I think he'd seen that if white takes on f4, so white recovers the pawn, but then c6 undermines the pawn on e6. And this could be tricky for white. Could be very interesting for black to play. You know, if you can take here and put pressure here. But Ding had something else in mind. What's the move? Of course, the exchange sack. This was a gift. It's incredible that Nepo had failed to consider this idea. And after knight b3, this knight is coming in here, and white absolutely dominates the position. These rooks on their own are completely helpless. They have nothing to do, and that knight is the absolute star of the show. Crucial variation is this. Black, of course, would love to support that pawn. Unfortunately, it loses immediately. d6. And then queen d5. And this is a fatal pin. Let's say f5 protects, but then d7, and that's too much for black. Black's position completely collapses. So everything works for white here. So Ding's going to be able to take here with complete domination. G5 played. Knight takes d4. Look at that piece. And black has no counterplay. It's one of those situations which is just miserable to play. I've been there. I've been in that situation. You just don't need it. It's horrible. And here's a great move from Ding. Not too difficult. Where do you want your knight? You want it on f5, of course. g4. It's just a complete killer on f5. Nepo took, but the knight is still going to get there. h5, knight f5. This is just... It's a dream position for Ding. It's a nightmare for Nepo. No counterplay. Look at that piece. I mean, frankly, if I were given the chance to take that rook, I don't think I would. I'd wait for something better to turn up. Anyway, rook h7 played by Nepo. Queen e4. Very solid. Just supporting the e-pawn. Stepping away from any possible complications with g4. You can always just keep the position closed. King h8. And now just the immediate lunge with e7 is completely winning. There is no defense to the queen coming into the position. Queen f7 played. I mean, there really is nothing better. d6. That is pretty ugly. So d7 threatened. Ugly for black. Beautiful for white. Of course, if queen e7, then you just take the rook. White is a piece up for nothing. Queen g8 played. Knight takes, queen takes. So the queen completely passive. And now it's time for white's queen to move in. And, well, the combination of threats against the king and this dominating pawn are too much for black, of course. Rook f1. There's a nice little step forcing the rook to a poor square. And now the rook switches back with the simple threat of rook d8 driving away the queen, and the pawn goes through. f5, the only chance to try to disrupt white's position, but of course it's completely lost because the king is now exposed. Queen e5 check. King f7. Lots of ways to win here, but queen f5 check. Nice to do things with check. Queen h7, king e6. You can just chase the king across the board, but Nepo finds a really subtle way to win, actually. He was very calm in this position, as you should be. He'd reached the time control. He had, all the time in the world to think, and he took his time. Queen g7. He just calculated properly. This is what you need to do in this phase of the game. Just calculate. Make sure everything is winning. If queen takes, then of course rook e1 wins the queen and will checkmate. And otherwise, yeah, rook e1 anyway is a threat. Rook g6 played, and after queen f8, Nepo resigned. Why did he resign? Let's have a look. Well, obviously, queen takes pawn, rook e1 check, again, is just winning the queen. And if rook g8, well, many, many ways to win. I think the nicest is to just do this one and then go rook d8. And you make a queen on the next turn. That's very neat. Wow. What a game from Ding Liren. He hits back. And, well, since yesterday, since game 3, he's looked very comfortable. He looked very comfortable in this game. Not that this was some kind of devastating opening innovation, but he simply was more familiar with this position, even though he said that after knight f4, he was actually out of his preparation. But of course, he knew the position well enough. He's looked at this kind of position before, and the way he played with this dynamic sacrifice was excellent. For Nepo fans, a worrying game, because Nepo at some moment, and this was the moment, started playing very impulsively. He played this move knight d4. It's a terrible mistake. Frankly, this exchange sack it's pretty obvious Nepo will be kicking himself. You know, he's not lost in this position by any stretch. With g5, it's a difficult position. But, you know, this is where you just have to knuckle down and defend. But knight d4. It was too good to be true, basically. There we go. Ding looking so much more comfortable. It's 2-2 in the match. It is anyone's, you know, who knows what's going to happen, but I'm absolutely delighted that we have a match on our hands that's not in any way one-sided, at least not at the moment. And yeah, Ding is back. Thanks for watching.